Did they ever see it coming? The truth is, they never believed you could break free, let alone rise above. Those chains they thought were unbreakable, the ones they so confidently wrapped around your spirit, have now been shattered. You haven't just emerged from the shadows, you've transformed into something far more powerful than they ever imagined. Each step you take sends shockwaves through the fragile illusions they built, illusions they thought would keep you bound forever. But now, as their reality crumbles, they're left to grapple with the force of your unexpected rise. The first reason they didn't expect it is that they trapped you in their illusion, but you saw through it. They spun a web of deception, intricate and delicate, believing they had you ensnared in a reality of their making. Each thread was a lie, each connection a manipulation designed to keep you docile and compliant. They thought they had you fooled, that their illusion was impenetrable, a fortress of falsehoods where you would remain forever lost. But they never accounted for your inner sight, your ability to perceive what lay beneath the surface. While they reveled in their cunning, you silently observed, your awareness sharpened by a vision they couldn't fathom. Your third eye, a gift they couldn't comprehend, pierced through the veils of their deception. It wasn't just sight, it was a divine clarity, a knowing that transcended the physical. You saw the cracks in their illusion, the fractures in their carefully constructed lies. Long before they realized you were aware, you played their game, biding your time, waiting for the moment when the truth would shatter their illusion like glass striking stone. When that moment arrived, the impact was seismic. The truth you unleashed wasn't just a revelation, it was a cataclysm. It ripped through their web of lies with a force they couldn't withstand, leaving them exposed and vulnerable. They had built their power on a foundation of deceit, never imagining that you could see the truth, let alone wield it with such devastating precision. But your vision, guided by a higher power, saw through their tricks and into the core of reality. And in that moment, they realized that the illusion they created to trap you was the very thing that led to their undoing. The second reason they didn't expect it is that they thought you were a pawn, but you were the real player. They orchestrated every move, convinced they were the masters of a game where you were merely a piece to be maneuvered. Their confidence was unshakable, believing they held all the power, all the strategies, and that you were blind to the broader scheme. But they failed to recognize that you weren't just a participant in their game. You were the one rewriting the rules. Every step you took was deliberate, calculated, and infused with a wisdom far beyond their understanding. While they focused on the immediate moves, their vision clouded by arrogance, you were already 10 steps ahead. They saw you as insignificant, a pawn in a grand design they believed was theirs alone. Yet in your silence, you were shaping a new game, one where their illusions of control were nothing but echoes in an empty hall. When the final move came, their shock was palpable. You didn't just checkmate them, you obliterated the board entirely. The game they thought they controlled unraveled in your hands, each piece falling into place with a precision they couldn't fathom. The true power was never in their hands. It was in the ancient wisdom guiding you, a force as old as time itself, whispering strategies that ensured your victory was inevitable. In that moment, they realized they were never the players. They were the pawns, moving according to a script they didn't even know existed. And as the realization dawned, they were left in the ruins of a game they thought they had mastered, facing the undeniable truth. You were always the real player, the one who held the power to reshape destiny itself. The third reason they didn't expect it is that they built walls to contain you, but you used them as stepping stones. They believed that by erecting barriers around you, they could confine your potential, box you into a reality where you would remain small and insignificant. Each wall they constructed was meant to be your prison, a fortress of limitations designed to crush your spirit and keep you from reaching the heights you were destined for. But what they didn't realize was that every stone they laid was infused with energy they couldn't control, a power they unknowingly handed over to you. While they toiled to raise those barriers, you saw the true nature of their creation. Those walls, meant to suppress, became conduits of raw energy, pulsating with the very force they sought to contain. Instead of cowering in the shadow of their limitations, you harnessed that energy, turning each obstacle into a stepping stone. With every climb, you rose higher, scaling the very walls they thought would imprison you. The walls that were supposed to be your downfall became your ascent. Each step you took on those stones was a defiance of their intentions, a testament to your ability to transmute their negativity into pure, unstoppable force. As you ascended, you tapped into the mystic currents that flowed through those barriers, currents they never understood, and used them to propel yourself beyond their reach. In the end, they looked up in disbelief as you stood above them, untouchable, having turned their own creation into the ladder that elevated you. The walls they built to contain you became the very structures that lifted you into realms they could never enter, leaving them trapped in the shadows of their own making, powerless as you soared into the heights they could never dream of. The fourth reason they didn't expect it is that they believed you'd fade into obscurity, but you became a legend. They dismissed you, relegating you to the background, certain that you would disappear into the shadows unnoticed and forgotten. They turned their backs, confident that time would erase your existence, that you would fade into the void of insignificance. But what they failed to understand was that your destiny was never to be hidden away. It was to become the echo that resounds through the ages, a name that transcends the limits of time and space. They believed your silence was surrender, but in that quiet, you were gathering strength, your spirit aligning with a power written in the very fabric of the universe. Your rise wasn't a mere chance, it was foretold in the stars, a prophecy they were too blind to see. As they continued to ignore you, your legend began to grow, whispered first in the hidden corners of the world, then spreading like wildfire until it blazed across the skies. You weren't just surviving, you were thriving, each step you took leaving an indelible mark that they couldn't erase. Your name became a force, reverberating in places they never imagined you'd reach. The legend of your rise was carried by the winds of destiny, reaching ears that were once deaf to your existence, awakening minds that had once ignored your presence. While they stood bewildered, you embraced your path, your spirit infused with the ancient power that was always yours to claim. And now, as they stand in stunned silence, you stand as a legend, a force they can never silence, a truth that will echo long after their names have faded. They believed you would disappear, but instead, you became the story that will be told for generations, a legend they can never outrun. The fifth reason they didn't expect it is that they tried to break your spirit, but you transmuted their darkness into power. They thought they could crush you, targeting the very core of your being, believing that by eroding your spirit, they would strip you of your strength. They unleashed their darkest energies, hoping to suffocate the light within you, to watch as you crumbled under the weight of their malevolence. But what they failed to understand is that you are not merely a vessel of light, you are an alchemist of the soul, a master of transmutation. As they poured their venom into your spirit, expecting it to corrode your essence, you absorbed every drop of their darkness. But instead of being consumed, you turned inward, channeling that darkness through the crucible of your being. In the hidden recesses of your soul, where they thought despair would take root, you ignited a fire so fierce it transformed their hatred into pure, unyielding power. The very darkness they hoped would extinguish your light became the fuel for your ascension, each shadow they cast becoming another step on the ladder you climbed. They couldn't comprehend what was happening, how their attempts to destroy you only made you stronger. You didn't just survive their attacks, you thrived because of them, your spirit evolving beyond anything they could imagine. The power they sought to steal from you was returned to them 1,000-fold, but it was no longer in their control. You took their darkness, turned it into light, and then used it to rise to heights they could never reach. Now, as they stand in the shadows, bewildered and powerless, you soar above, a force they can no longer touch, an alchemist who turned their destruction into the very source of your unstoppable power. The sixth reason they didn't expect it is that they thought they could define your limits, but you were always limitless. They drew lines around you, thinking they could contain your potential, measure your worth, and dictate how far you could go. They built walls not out of bricks but out of expectations, assumptions, and the narrow confines of their understanding. To them, you were a puzzle with missing pieces, a being they could control by defining your edges. But what they failed to grasp is that you were never bound by their rules. Your essence is a force that transcends the very concept of limitation. As they watched, confident in the boundaries they had set, you began to move in ways they could not predict. Every line they drew became irrelevant as you shattered each one effortlessly, revealing a power they had never imagined. They saw you defy gravity, breaking through the ceiling they thought would keep you grounded. But what they didn't understand is that you were never subject to their laws. Your spirit is infinite, connected to realms they can't even begin to comprehend. They tried to box you in, believing that by setting limits, they could control your destiny. But your spirit, boundless and eternal, was never something they could contain. Each time they tried to tether you, you slipped through their grasp, expanding beyond the horizons they thought they had defined. You moved with the force of a river that knows no boundaries, flowing into places they never thought you'd reach. Now, as they stand on the other side of the limits they imposed, they see you soaring above, untouched by the constraints they thought would bind you. You weren't just breaking free, you were revealing a truth they never anticipated. You are limitless, connected to infinite possibilities that they can never comprehend. The seventh reason they didn't expect it is that they expected you to follow, but you led a revolution. They laid out a path meticulously designed for you to walk in their shadow, believing that your destiny was to be a mere follower in their grand design. They thought they could dictate your steps, that you would conform to the blueprint they had drawn. But what they never anticipated was the fire that burned within you, a fire that couldn't be extinguished by their expectations or constrained by their limitations. As they watched, confident that you would fall in line, you did something they could never foresee. You broke away. You didn't just step off their path, you forged a new one that blazed with the light of your defiance. In your wake, others saw the possibility of freedom, their chains growing weaker with every move you made. You didn't just walk away, you led a revolution, a movement that spread like wildfire, igniting hearts and minds that had been dormant for too long. But this revolution was no ordinary uprising. It wasn't born of mere rebellion. It was fueled by the energy of countless souls who had walked this path before you, their strength coursing through your veins, guiding your every action. You were a conduit for a power that transcended time and space, a leader channeling the wisdom of the ages, igniting a force that could not be contained. As you led, the world around you began to change. The chains they had placed on others started to break, the walls they built crumbling under the weight of the movement you had sparked. They stood in disbelief as their carefully constructed order fell apart, unable to comprehend how the one they expected to follow had become the leader of a revolution that would transcend time itself. You didn't just lead, you became the catalyst for a transformation they could never control, a force that would echo through eternity. The eighth reason they didn't expect it is that they tried to silence you, but your voice became thunder. They conspired to stifle your words, thinking that by drowning you in silence, they could erase your presence from the world. They underestimated the power within you, believing that your voice would never rise above the noise of their control. They crafted a cage of quiet, a place where they thought your words would wither and fade. But they never understood that your voice was never just your own. It was a force of nature, a storm waiting to be unleashed. When you finally spoke, the world trembled. Your words weren't mere sounds. They were a thunderclap that shattered the stillness they had imposed. The quiet they relied on to suppress you was obliterated in an instant, replaced by a resonance that shook the very foundations of their reality. Your voice, once dismissed as inconsequential, now echoed across distances they never dreamed you could reach, reverberating in places they believed were beyond your influence. But the true power of your voice wasn't just in its volume. It was in the divine resonance that amplified it. The universe itself aligned with your truth, each word carrying the weight of countless souls who had been silenced before you. Your voice became a conduit for a power far greater than they could comprehend, a celestial force that turned your every syllable into a shockwave. As your words spread, they were left stunned, their attempts to silence you reduced to nothing more than futile whispers, lost in the roar of your thunder. The silence they imposed was shattered, and in its place, your voice became a symphony of defiance, echoing through the corridors of time, leaving them powerless to suppress the truth you unleashed. The ninth reason they didn't expect it is that they saw only your shadow, but you were the light they feared. They fixated on the darkness that followed you, convinced they had deciphered your essence by what lingered in the shadows. Their eyes were drawn to your struggles, your moments of doubt, thinking they had uncovered your limits. But what they failed to see, in their obsession with your shadow, was the brilliance of the light you carried within. They were so blinded by their own perceptions that they missed the truth that was always right in front of them. When your light finally broke free, it wasn't a flicker. It was a blinding blaze that shattered their illusions. The darkness they thought defined you was only the smallest part of your being, a reflection cast by the radiance they refused to acknowledge. As your light erupted, it was as if the very fabric of reality shifted. They couldn't help but retreat, overwhelmed by the force of the brilliance they had never anticipated. But the true revelation was in the nature of that light. You weren't just another soul struggling through the shadows. You were the lightbearer, a carrier of a divine spark that was always destined to illuminate the darkness. The power they had overlooked, the light they dismissed as insignificant, was the very force they feared most. It wasn't just your shadow they were wary of. It was the potential of your light, the undeniable truth that you were always more than what they saw. Their fear was the ultimate proof of your power. As they recoiled, unable to withstand the intensity of your brilliance, they realized too late that you were not the shadow they had fixated on. You were the light they could never contain. The beacon they had always feared would outshine them. And now, as your light continues to blaze, they are left in the darkness, haunted by the realization that the very thing they tried to suppress was the one thing they could never conquer. They thought they knew you, believed they had you figured out. Their assumptions were built on the surface, on shadows and whispers, never daring to explore the true depths of who you are. They underestimated your strength, your resilience, and most of all, your connection to forces that exist beyond their comprehension. They tried to fit you into their limited understanding, to bind you within the constraints of their expectations. But what they failed to grasp was that you were always meant to transcend those boundaries. Your victory wasn't just a surprise, it was a revelation, a tearing of the veil that exposed the truth they had long denied. Your rise is not just a triumph over them, it is a testament to the divine forces that guide you. Every obstacle they placed in your path became fuel for your ascension. Every attempt to diminish you only amplified your power. You weren't merely reacting to their moves, you were orchestrating a symphony of victory, each note resonating with the energy of countless lifetimes. You've risen beyond their understanding, and in doing so, you've shattered the illusions they clung to. As they stand in disbelief, their world unraveling around them, they're forced to confront a reality they never anticipated. You are not just a player in their game, you are the force that rewrites the rules, the light that exposes their shadows, the voice that echoes across the void they tried to silence. While they scramble to make sense of your triumph, you continue to ascend, guided by an inner knowing that they can never touch. You move with a purpose that is both ancient and eternal, a force that defies their attempts to contain it. And now, as you ascend, you leave them behind, trapped in the maze of their own making, forever wondering how they could have been so blind. They underestimated the power of the chosen ones, and in that underestimation, they sealed their own fate. You've become the legend they never saw coming, a testament to the unstoppable force of those who are truly aligned with the divine,